the Bears are hosting the Lions. Obviously, if the Lions are fully healthy, I don't think anyone's giving them a snowball's chance in hell in this game. But
Right.
the Lions are very beat up.
Very.
I'll start there with my matchup that matters before we go to yours. They are down five. No, no, no. They're down four out of their top five linebackers that they had going into the season. Four out of their top five. Jack Campbell's the only linebacker that they had slated as a rotational and contributing linebacker going into this season that is still healthy and in the lineup. Everyone else is on injured reserve. So that's not to mention all the other injuries. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson, Lee McNeil, David Montgomery, right? I mean, like there's so many injuries. Carlton Davis, like there's just so many injuries that they have gone through. Linebacker is the one that has hit them the hardest and where they are the thinnest. So how do you attack that? Thomas Brown, how do you go after some inexperienced linebacker play that the Lions might have? Is it using Cole Kmet a little bit more because it feels like he's been a little bit underutilized this season?
Especially the last couple of games.
Is it running the ball a little bit more because DeAndre Swift had a better game last week? So are you going to try to ride that wave a little bit more and try to attack the middle of that defense and the linebacker level and just try to run the ball a little bit more? Maybe throwing the ball to running backs a little bit more as well whenever they're matched up against linebackers, specifically not Jack Campbell when he is in coverage. So that to me is the matchup that matters. Knowing how beat up the Lions are at linebacker. Is this an area where the Bears feel like they might really be able to find an edge? Because the Thanksgiving Day game, in the end, they had a chance, right? They were right there. And so they got close in the end. I don't know if it's close all game, but hey, they were close in the end. Now the Lions are even a little bit more beat up. Can you take what you learned in that week? Can you improve upon it a little bit? And can you attack their weaknesses and their unfortunate injuries a little bit more? That is my matchup that matters.
Yeah, I think that mine goes along with that. And you also have to, though, consider that this isn't exactly, from a mentality standpoint, the same Bears team that the Lions saw on Thanksgiving. The Bears still had some pride to play for. They wanted to play for Thomas Brown as far as, making the coaching change and all that kind of stuff happening. I don't know that this Bears team is equipped to manufacture any sort of motivation. But that being said, Lions are still, it would be wise not to roll over and just, say, oh, well, we'll be fine. It's the Bears. Still take them a little bit seriously. But what was interesting about this last game against the Minnesota Vikings, Caleb Williams, his passer rating actually went up versus the blitz and when facing pressure, which is completely counterintuitive to what you would expect, especially for someone that holds the ball a little too long. Has been sacked at the highest rate of any quarterback this season by a very large margin, by the way. But something that I think happens when Caleb Williams can recognize the blitz, obviously, or can recognize obvious pressure, is that's the only place that he decides to get rid of the ball faster or take some of those checkdowns or take some of those quick, more higher probability throws, which is why I think his passer rating goes up because his completion rate goes up. He's not throwing the ball down the field and he's getting rid of the ball a little bit faster. So I do think that the Lions have been blitzing at the fifth highest rate this year, especially since Aiden Hutchinson went down. I think that number even goes up. It's because they can't really do much more than blitz with all of the holes that they're trying to cover up on that defense. The answer that Aaron Glenn has found is just blitz the hell out of teams. And so if you're going to do that against Caleb Williams, is that going to force him into that? Like, you almost have to. It's almost like forcing him into a tempo offense or a kind of a rhythm offense and those taking those short throws and trying to get the ball out faster, because otherwise Caleb Williams has been known to hold the ball. The offensive line, the Bears have had, I believe, the most combinations of offensive linemen this season so far. So there's just no continuity there whatsoever. It's really just an interesting thing to watch with this Bears offense. There's no easy answers. Everything looks hard because everything is hard. And if you can simplify that because Caleb Williams is recognizing that the blitz is coming or that there's obvious pressure, which is what the Lions have been doing, maybe you force them to get the ball a little bit faster, and that's where Cole Kmet comes in. That's where a check down to DeAndre Swift comes in, getting him in space, all that kind of stuff. And then, you're left with the middle level of the defense, which is hurting tremendously for Detroit. That's, I think, the only chance that the Bears really have to have any sort of production against Detroit.
This might be a little bit of an obvious one when it comes to my plus factor, but it's Craig Reynolds, the running back that now has to step in to that 1-2 punch that Detroit is so used to. And obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs being the more explosive one, the one who has been starting the entire season, they're going to lean on him more. I don't think it's going to be as even of a split as it was with Montgomery and Gibbs. But at the same time, Craig Reynolds hasn't seen a carry since week 12. Like they're very comfortable with their two-man rushing rotation. They're not one where, all right, well, let's mix in a third running back here to, give somebody else some other reps. I mean, basically only in the games where they've really been ahead by a lot are these guys getting significant work. So this is a two-headed rushing attack. That's how they have gone about this entire season. And even with David Montgomery out, I don't think it just becomes we're going to give Jahmyr Gibbs every single carry here. I still think there is going to be some sort of a split, and Reynolds is obviously going to have to be an efficient part of that. So, the identity and the situation of how, here's what I would say. We talk about like Ben Johnson and his chemistry with Jared Goff, and obviously it's something to note. What he has done, specializing those two guys, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, in the run game and putting them on the field in situations where their strengths truly shine, is also why he is a fantastic offensive coordinator and play designer.
Yeah.
How much are you willing to sacrifice knowing how successful you have been putting Jahmyr Gibbs in those situations with limited, it feels like the wrong word, but I guess like non-workhorse workload, right? Like, are you willing to put him in more situations out there on the field to get him more tired or more banged up or just having less energy and less focus for the plays that you designed for Jahmyr Gibbs? How much are you willing to go away from that to play him on those more David Montgomery snaps just because Montgomery's not there, versus how much you would like to continue to give that to somebody else, here Craig Reynolds, to keep Jahmyr focused and fresh on being the best player that he can be when he goes out there for more of those design plays. So that is, again, a Reynolds to me becomes the big plus factor, because he is a major determining factor, not just in every time that he touches the ball, but also in how you deploy and how often you deploy Jahmyr Gibbs, and how tired he might get and how not used to it he might be rushing behind, different run concepts or things like that might have been drawn up for Montgomery. Not that he can't do it. I just wonder how much of the relationship is there between playing him in those Montgomery snaps versus the ones that we know we always wanted to go to Jahmyr. How much are you putting on his plate? I think how Craig Reynolds plays will determine that a little bit. What about you?
Yeah, it's really that's really fascinating to me about this David Montgomery injury is, how does Ben Johnson compensate for that? Does he try to keep put Craig Reynolds in that David Montgomery spot? Do the splits, the run pass splits, just change then? Do you go to the air a little bit more now, especially that you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams has been having a good year just kind of as a gadget guy stretching the field. Tim Patrick has had a resurgence over the last couple weeks for the Detroit Lions since he's been back in the lineup. Do you then just kind of rely a little bit more on Jared Goff and then your offensive line now that it's fully intact, and not like in the pass game, versus trying to maybe evenly split the run pass a little bit more like we have seen? That's going to be what I am going to be looking for sure. Did you have something else that you wanted to say?
No, I was oh shoot, what was I going to say? You were just talking about something and now I completely lost my train of thought because I was already moving on to the next game. Just boom, that's where we were going. I cannot remember what I was going to say. If I remember it, I'm going to blurt it out like an idiot while we're talking about the other game.
There is something about this with the plus factor that I want to just highlight, the fact that, and it's not highlight, it's a low light. The Bears defense has been steadily devolving or regressing. It started before the Bears fired Matt Eberflus, and it's only gotten worse since then. They've been a lot less multiple. They spent almost a large majority of their snaps this last game against Minnesota in nickel, hardly playing in base, which is going to be interesting against the Detroit Lions. Again, when you're talking about a rushing attack or even using a guy like Sam Laporta, how do you deal with a guy like that They have not been able to generate pressure up front. The Bears haven't. They've converted just 14% of their pressures into sacks since week 8, which is the second lowest rate in the NFL in that span. They're 30th in EPA per play as a defense, and they've allowed the 104.7 passer rating, 26th in the league. So when we're talking about, are you going to start passing the ball more now that you don't have David Montgomery and maybe the splits kind of skew towards the pass? Well, this is the team to do it against, because as far as the passer rating that they're allowing and just their coverage unit in general, their defense in general has just taken so many steps back. And again, it started before Flus was fired. There's just not a lot of good about this team right now in Chicago, and going against a team that doesn't have a large margin for error in the Detroit Lions. When you're talking about trying to get the 1 seed, you've got virtually no margin for error because you got Minnesota right on your tail for the division and the 1 seed. You've got the Eagles right there. Even the Packers are being pesky about this whole thing. So that's something that they have all of the motivation to play for. And you know that this offense is capable of scoring points. It's the number 1 scoring offense in the league, going against a defense that looks completely defeated and doesn't seem to be doing any singular thing very well right now.